Before you had a name, before you could form a sentence, before you could ask a single question about what was real, someone answered for you. They told you what you were, and they were wrong. Not accidentally, deliberately, because the version of you that knows what it actually is does not need permission, does not need institutions, and does not need to ask anyone for access to its own power. That version is ungovernable, and ungovernable people are bad for business. This is not philosophy. This is the most practical thing anyone has ever kept from you. The Hermetic text, known as the Kybalion, compiled from the oral traditions attributed to Hermes Trismegistus and published in 1908 by 3 anonymous initiates calling themselves the 3 Initiates, opens with a principle so fundamental it should be printed on birth certificates. The all is mind. The universe is mental. That is not a metaphor. That is the first law. Everything you experience is downstream of what you accept is true about yourself. And someone decided what you would accept before you were old enough to refuse it. If this channel has found you, it is because part of you already recognized what I just said. The ancient switch does not recruit. It does not persuade. It transmits, and the signal either matches the frequency you are already moving toward, or it does not. If you subscribe, you are not joining anything. You are returning to something that was already yours. That is all. Here is the lie. It is the same lie everywhere on earth, dressed in different languages, wearing different uniforms, but structurally identical in every culture that has a schoolroom and a clock. The lie is this: you are a blank page, and authority writes on you. Your parents write your values. Your teachers write your intelligence. Your religion writes your morality. Your government writes your rights. And by the time you are old enough to hold the pen yourself, the page is so full of someone else's handwriting that you assume it is your own. This is not an accident. This is architecture. Think about what actually happened to you between ages 0 and 7. You had no capacity for critical thought. Developmental neuroscience has confirmed this repeatedly. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for evaluating claims and rejecting false ones, does not begin meaningful development until roughly age 7. Before that, the brain operates primarily in theta wave states, which is the same brainwave pattern used in hypnosis. This is not fringe science. This was documented by researchers at the University of Washington's Institute for Learning and Brain Sciences. Children under 7 are in a state of essentially open, uncritical absorption. Whatever is told to them drops directly into the subconscious without a filter. So what did they tell you? They told you that you are limited, that some people are smart and some are not, and you had better figure out which one you are quickly. They told you that good behavior means compliance. They told you that asking too many questions is a problem. They told you that the people in charge are in charge for a reason. They told you that what you want matters less than what you are supposed to want. And none of that was true, but you were in a theta state. You had no filter. It went straight in. And the person you have been performing as ever since, the one who hesitates, the one who asks for permission, the one who feels vaguely wrong for wanting more, but cannot articulate why, that person is a construction. A program installed before the operator was present. Let me make this practical, because theory without application is just decoration for people who like feeling intelligent without changing anything. You are 25 years old. You work a job that drains you. You chose it, not because you wanted it, but because between the ages of 5 and 17, the people around you defined what was realistic, and you absorbed their definition without questioning it. Your father said money is hard to come by. Your mother said people like us do not get those opportunities. Your teachers gave you a grade, and you believed the grade was you. Now you wake up every morning inside the life those definitions built, and you think the walls are real. They are not walls. They are suggestions you received under hypnosis, and you have been obeying them on autopilot ever since. The ancient Egyptians understood this, specifically the scribes of the Luxor Temple, a structure that scholars like R. A. Schwaller de Lubitsch spent 15 years studying and documented in his work, The Temple of Man, published in 1957, encoded a remarkable idea directly into the architecture. The temple itself is laid out in the shape of a human body, not symbolically, anatomically. The runes correspond to organs. The proportions correspond to human skeletal ratios. The innermost chamber sits where the brain would be. The meaning was not hidden. It was the entire building. The human being is the temple. The divine does not reside above you or outside you. It is housed in the structure of your body, accessible through the structure of your mind. This was not a belief system. It was an engineering diagram, and it was understood for thousands of years, until it became very inconvenient for certain power structures that needed you looking up instead of looking in. You, the person watching this right now, I want you to hear something specific, because the rest of the noise in your life is not going to say it. The reason you feel like something is wrong, not broken, not dramatic, just persistently, quietly off, is not because you are damaged. It is because you are running someone else's operating instructions, and a part of you has known that since you were old enough to feel the friction. That feeling is not a flaw. It is the most accurate signal you have. Now, what did the removal of this knowledge actually cost you? It is not abstract. It is Tuesday. It is the alarm going off. It is the specific, measurable distance between the life you are living and the one you would have built if someone had told you the truth at age 4 instead of installing a program. Take a person who grew up being told anger is bad. Not dangerous anger, all anger. The child learns to suppress it. By 20, they cannot set a boundary without a physical stress response. By 25, they are in a relationship where they tolerate things that genuinely harm them because the act of saying no triggers the same guilt that was installed when they were 3 years old and told to stop being difficult. That is not a personality trait. That is a program running exactly as designed. And the person who installed it, probably a parent who was also programmed, to be fair, did not do it maliciously. They did it because compliance is easier to manage than sovereignty. But understanding the origin does not excuse the continuation. At some point, and that point is now, the responsibility transfers to you. Your parents installed the program. You are the one still running it. That is not blame. That is the location of the off switch. Carl Jung called this the shadow. Specifically, in his 1951 work, I.N. Researches into the Phenomenology of the Self, Jung described a shadow not as your dark side. That is the pop culture reduction that guts the concept of its power, but as everything about yourself that was deemed unacceptable by the environment you grew up in and was subsequently buried in the unconscious. The shadow is not your worst qualities. The shadow is your rejected qualities. And often the qualities that were rejected were the most threatening to the people around you. Your ambition was rejected because it made insecure adults uncomfortable. Your intensity was rejected because it could not be controlled easily. Your questions were rejected because the people you were asking did not have answers, and that terrified them. So you cut those parts off. Not because they were wrong, but because keeping them meant losing love, losing safety, losing belonging. A child will abandon its own nature before it will risk abandonment by its caregivers. Every time. That is not weakness. That is survival. But you are not a child anymore, and the survival strategy is now the prison. Here's what nobody tells you about reclaiming what was buried. It does not feel good. It feels disorienting. It feels like betrayal, specifically like you're betraying the people who raised you. Because in a very real sense, you are. You are breaking the agreement you made before you could consent to it. The agreement that said, I will be small so you can feel safe. Every person who ever told you to be realistic was asking you to participate in their limitations. That is not evil. It is just honest. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Neville Goddard, not a theorist, a practitioner, a man who gave over 300 recorded lectures in Los Angeles between 1948 and 1972, had a technique he called revision. Not visualization, revision. In his 1954 lecture, The Pruning Shears of Revision, he instructed people to take any event from their day that they did not want to keep, replay it in imagination as they wished it had happened, and fall asleep in that revised version. Not as fantasy, as the selected reality. His argument, drawn directly from his reading of the Bible as psychological allegory, was that consciousness does not passively observe events. It selects them. The version of the day you hold in mind at the threshold of sleep is the version that seeds the next day's reality. This sounds absurd until you apply it and find that it works. And then it sounds obvious, which is the hallmark of every suppressed truth. It was always self-evident. It just required someone to say it without flinching. Let me ground this. You are 23. You just had an argument with someone you care about. It went badly. The old program says replay it, assign blame, feel guilty, rehearse what you should have said, carry the emotional residue into the next day. Let it color every interaction. That is the default. That is the program running. Goddard's instruction is different. Before sleep, replay the event as you wanted it to go. Not to lie to yourself, to select. To place your consciousness in the version of events that aligns with who you are deciding to be, rather than who you were trained to be. The subconscious, the same open, programmable system that accepted everything it was told before age 7, receives this revised impression and begins reorganizing accordingly. You did not need a therapist for that. You did not need a guru. You needed the instruction manual that was removed from the curriculum. And this is the part that should make you angry if you are paying attention, because this was removed deliberately, not by some cartoon villain in a tower, by systems that require your compliance to function. A school system needs you to accept that intelligence is measured by obedience to instruction. An economic system needs you to believe that your labor is worth what they say it is worth. A medical system needs you to believe that your body is a machine that breaks randomly and only experts can fix it. A religious system needs you to believe that divinity is outside you and accessible only through approved intermediaries. Every single one of those systems collapses the moment you sit quietly with yourself and realize that the kybalion's first principle was literal. The universe is mental. Your experience is generated by what you hold to be true in the part of your mind you cannot easily access, the part that was programmed before you could speak. Tesla wrote about this from an entirely different angle, but arrived at the same destination. In his autobiography, My Inventions, published as a series in Electrical Experimenter magazine in 1919, Tesla described how every one of his inventions appeared first as a complete image in his mind, so vivid and detailed that he could test and modify the device mentally before ever building a physical prototype. He did not call this imagination in the way we dismiss it, as fantasy. He described it as a faculty, a function of consciousness that is as real and as operational as sight or hearing. The man who engineered alternating current, radio transmission, and remote control told you directly that the mind constructs reality before the hands touch material. And we named a car company after him and ignored the part that actually mattered. Let me bring this back to your life, right now. Not the abstraction of your life, the actual one. The one where you check your bank account and feel something drop in your stomach. The one where you avoid certain phone calls because you do not want to deal with what is on the other side. The one where you set goals on January 1st and abandon them by February because the goal was made by the conscious mind and the subconscious was never consulted, and the subconscious runs the show. That gap between what you want and what you keep getting, that is not bad luck. That is two different programs running simultaneously. The conscious mind says, I want more. The subconscious mind, still running the software, installed at age 4, says, people like you do not get more. And the subconscious wins, every single time. It wins because it operates continuously, it operates automatically, and it was programmed first. So the question is not how to want different things. The question is how to reprogram the system that was written before you were literate. And the answer is not complicated. It is just inconvenient because it requires you to stop doing the thing that feels most natural, reacting. Marcus Aurelius, not a guru, an emperor, a man running an empire while simultaneously at war along the Danube, writing in his personal journal, never intended for publication, which we now call Meditations, composed around 170 AD, wrote a line that functions as a complete operating manual in 11 words. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this. That is not a platitude. That is an engineering specification. He is saying the only thing you control is what you hold in mind. Everything outside you is noise, feedback, consequence, and projection. The point of leverage is internal, always only. A person who understands this does not react to an insult, not because they are patient, because they recognize the insult is data about the other person's internal state, not a fact about their own. A person who understands this does not panic when the rent is late, not because they are calm by nature, because they recognize that the panic is the old program activating, the one that says scarcity is permanent and danger is everywhere, and they choose deliberately to run a different process. If you have been struggling and you have been genuinely trying, not performing effort, not posting about how hard it is, but actually sitting alone with this and doing the work of questioning every assumption you inherited, then hear this. The struggle is not evidence that you are failing. It is evidence that the old program is resisting deletion. That is all. Stay with it? Now here is where it gets uncomfortable, and this is where most people leave because the implication is too large. If everything you were told before age 7 went in without a filter, and if that programming is still running your decisions, your emotional patterns, your financial habits, your relationships, then the person you think you are is not you. It is a composite of other people's fears, limitations, and unexamined assumptions, walking around in your body using your name. The real you, not the sentimental version, the actual one, is what is left when you strip all of that away. And most people will never meet that person because the process of stripping it away feels like dying. The ego, which Jung defined not as arrogance, but as the conscious identity structure, the I that you think you are, does not go quietly. It was built to protect you. It was built by a child who needed to survive, and telling it that its services are no longer required feels, at the nervous system level, like annihilation. This is why people quit, not because the work is intellectually hard, because the body responds to identity change with the same chemical cascade it uses for physical threat. Your heart rate increases, your palms sweat. Your mind generates every possible reason to stop, and if you do not know this in advance, you interpret those signals as proof that you are going the wrong direction. You are not. You are going exactly the right direction. The resistance is the confirmation. Every ancient tradition that encoded this knowledge used the same metaphor: death and rebirth. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, more accurately translated as the Book of Coming Forth by Day, a collection of funerary spells compiled over centuries, with the most complete version found in the Papyrus of Ani, dated approximately 1250 BC, is not about what happens after physical death. It is an instruction manual for the death of the false self while you are still alive. The trials described in the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, are psychological. The weighing of the heart against the feather of Mat is the measurement of whether you have shed the lies that weigh you down. If your heart is lighter than the feather, if you have released what was never true, you pass through. If it is not, you are consumed. Not by a demon, by your own refusal to let go. That was never about the afterlife. It was about this life, about right now, about whether you will release the version of yourself that was written by committee before you were conscious, or whether you will drag it with you until it is all you are. The choice is not complicated. The execution is the hardest thing you will ever do, and there is no trick, no shortcut, no 3-step process that makes it painless. There is only the willingness to sit with the discomfort of becoming unfamiliar to yourself and the knowledge confirmed by every tradition that was serious enough to get buried, that what is on the other side of that discomfort is the only thing that was ever actually yours. They did not hide this because it was dangerous to you. They hid it because it was dangerous to them. A person who knows what they are does not comply automatically, does not consume on command, does not hand their attention to whoever demands it loudest. A person who knows what they are is the end of every system that requires unconscious participation to survive. You were not born empty. You were born complete and then systematically convinced otherwise by people who needed you incomplete to function inside their structures. The program was installed before you could speak, but you can speak now. And the first word of every new operating system is the same. It has always been the same. No,